In this episode, we're going to talk about relationships, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we want to look at what are some symptoms and signs of a dysfunctional relationship. What do we tend to see in our practice frequently? But then what would it look like to have a healthy relationship? And how can you transition and get healed and work on yourselves and the people you're in community with so that you can go from a negative or dysfunctional relationship to something that is God honoring and glorifying and healthy? Welcome everyone to Face to Face with Dr. Sarita Lyons. I am again joined by my friends and colleagues, Mr. Vincent Calloway and Dr. Randolph Walters. And we have been having a good time. Hopefully you all are enjoying the content that we've been putting out and the communication and conversations that we've had going on. So what is it? What do we see often that both married couples and singles who are dating and trying to navigate relationships, what are they bringing into our offices?
I'm seeing a lot of issues around blended family because people are coming in after being divorced or having children from a previous relationship before they got married. So we see a lot of issues around blended family and conflicts with the baby mama or with the father, the daddy, things like that. Also seeing a lot of, sad to say, a lot of infidelity. Tremendous amount of infidelity, tremendous amount of mistrust. A lot of it is centered around social media. Folks are very sloppy, they're getting caught because of social media, so they have to deal with that. The spouse that's been cheated on has the goods, so the person who's the cheater can't really deny. So in a way that's good, we can do the work if they're willing to do the work, but there's so much damage when that type of betrayal takes place. And then we see, of course, issues that people are having in their current relationships, how they function currently because they have not resolved their family of origin issues, especially their work around their relationship with their fathers. So I'm seeing a lot of that. So people are just like paralyzed and don't really know how to do healthy relationship, what it looks like. So, and then issues around trauma, we talked about that earlier, like post-traumatic stress disorder, people not healed from that's devastating to relationships. And then the self-medication, the behaviors that follow that, including getting involved in maybe pornography, then sexual addictions, all that is the type of stuff that I see. Some of the stuff that I see in regards to relationships. I won't take up all the time. I'm sure you see some stuff too.
I said ditto to everything that Vincent said. Identical things I see. There are two things I would like to touch on, and Vincent alluded to this a little bit. Social media and technology has significantly, based on my observation, impacted relationships. I can't tell you how many couples I work with where the issue is connected to texting and people misunderstanding each other, people having to clarify who this person is and it didn't mean this, and Facebook, texting, all of that stuff is somehow creating a lot of havoc in relationships. Even when there is it may be innocent, just the insertion of that. And I want to encourage you out there to just, like, we have to draw good boundaries around our relationships and we have to communicate. So that's just a new thing, man. So a lot of fighting is happening because of text messages and stuff on Facebook, who posts and what. That's created, that's like a big thing, creating a lot of problems. The other thing I want to mention, because Vincent pretty much touched on the stuff here, I do see a lot of infidelity. One of the things that I started to see 2 years ago is in infidelity cases, I'm seeing more and more cases where it is the woman who was the person that had the affair and not the man. It was very interesting. I'm seeing a little more of that. But the last thing I want to say is, I think a lot of times in with couples that I see, people are married but behaving like they're single. That's the way I want to put it. That sometimes when I sort of diagnose what's going on, that yes, there's communication is big, but I find that a lot of times somebody's behaving like they're single, and it's creating a lot of tension and conflict because they don't really know how to do marriage. And you can't be married and behave like you're single. So there's no accountability. You know, one person is kind of doing whatever they want. They're not communicating. And they don't understand, for example, that, and this is where, for me, faith is so important. You have to learn to die in marriage. Marriage is about dying. It's not just about what I want. No, my needs are not being met. So we have to teach a lot of that. But people don't know how to do relationships.
Right.
And it really is a reflection of a lot of the breakdown in family. We see it in church. People don't know how to do relationships. So they don't do church well. They don't do community well. And so that's a big thing for me. Really helping people to see, if you're married, this is what marriage should look like. And you can't behave like you're single.
Yeah.
Right? Especially men. I think a lot of times men are probably most of the culprits I see, but it is one of the dynamics. So I would say, for me, I want to emphasize that. But everything Vincent said is true in terms of the issues around marriage.
Well, and I think I was just going to say on and piggybacking on the marital piece. I think what we often find is people thought that marriage was going to solve their integrity issues and their issues with God that they were struggling with as a single person, and marriage was somehow the safety of being able to have sex legally, so to speak, biblically, and now you have someone that you get to spend your life with. So if you were once someone who struggled with loneliness and identity issues, that soon as someone wants me and marries me, all of that goes away, and we're often looking for our husbands or wives to provide something for us that really Jesus wants to meet. And so marriage becomes a context through which our deepest insecurities and fears get coughed up so that we can really do the soul and heart work with the Lord anyway. I think you don't really know who a person is until you marry them. Although we need to do a really good job of courting well, courting with accountability and community and wisdom. But there's something about marriage that people just kind of undress and unveil, and their real self, their representative goes away. The only thing that dies in marriage is the representative. The only thing that dies is the representative, and then the real self emerges. And to the social media point, I think that social media is allowing people, based on our last session, to pretend. It just is a context where people get to have this alternate life, and I see a lot of women, particularly, I'm going to speak from what I see for women, just engaging in so much desperation. The millennial word would be thirst, like being thirsty, taking pictures of themselves. It's almost like it's marketing themselves, like trying to be bought. So the idea is, hopefully I'll catch, some man will find me. He that finds a wife finds a good thing. But we're advertising in such an ungodly way that is so, inconsistent with who we say we are as a woman of God. And so on one hand, women are putting out scriptures and quoting and have a blessed day. And then the next minute their chest is hanging out in a picture. So this lack of integrity with regard to how we use social media. But these are issues that social media is revealing. You know what I mean? Just like we always had a racism problem, we're talking about it a lot more now because we have cameras and lots of things have been caught. Social media is, the truth of the matter is, y'all know good and well, we glad there was no social media before we were redeemed and post-redemption. So a lot of the older generation just didn't have their stuff on blast the way social media puts people on blast nowadays. But yeah, it's just exposing the heart. It's exposing our innermost struggles. I see people on social media, working out all their frustration, and I want to say, go to therapy. Like, don't put that stuff on social media. So, and that is impacting marriages. I think with the point about acting single, it's not just that people are acting single in the sense of like you're a bachelor, like you can just flirt and do whatever. But I also see singleness and meaning every way that you tried to walk holy and upright, hopefully, before God in your single life. It's like when you're in marriage, we forfeit so many of the benefits of being married. So one of the huge issues that I see constantly is married couples living in sexless marriages. I mean, not having intimacy with one another. So we obviously see a breakdown in intimacy just on communication and what it really means to know the other. But you have people who are married, and I mean, just because you have 5, 6, 7 kids, I mean, that means you didn't have sex 5, 6, 7 times. That's not an indication of a healthy sex life in a marriage. But I can't tell you the pain that both men and women, it's not just men wanting it and women denying it, both men and women for various reasons, just months and years of not connecting on that deep physical way.
That's right. So we spend a lot of time, all of us spend a lot of time helping people to connect. That's the word I was thinking. Connection is a synonym for being intimate. People don't know how to, and this is not in just marriage, this is in dating relationships. People don't know how to connect on a spiritual and a psychological level. They start trying to connect on a sexual, physical level before they get that psychological and spiritual connection. So we spend a lot of time helping people to learn the skills, because it takes skill, communication skills, listening skills, empathic listening skills in order to connect. And that becomes the foundation for conflict management. We know that if a person, a couple can, two people can really love each other, have feelings for each other, and even be committed to each other, but if they don't have the skills to resolve conflict, that relationship going down. And as you would say, jacked up, toe up, whatever like that, the relationship is going to be toe up and jacked up and very painful and mutually dissatisfying for both, just because they don't have the skills necessary to resolve conflict. So obviously we see a whole lot of that.
Can you break down some of the skills that couples need to learn that we try to teach in therapy?
Yes. Well, one of the things, to just a statement on that, what I say to couples is, love is enough, but love is not enough. Because, love is enough because at the end of the day, that's why a lot of our, great-grandparents and so on were able to keep marriages so long, because when you have tough times, it's really love, as the Bible says. But love is not enough because you can't take it to the bank. That people need some skills. People that love each other end up divorcing because they didn't have the skills.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And so love is not enough. They're both right, because you need more than love.
That's right.
You need to learn how to have good sex. You need to learn how to have fun together. You need to learn how to handle conflict. You need to learn how to communicate. You need to learn how to raise children. You need to learn how to deal with the traumas you've had. You need to learn how to support each other when you're going through parents who are transitioning and getting older and all of that. You need to learn, oh my goodness, that's another show, Dr. Lyons. You need to learn how to deal with midlife crisis as you get older. So so love is not enough, brother. I'm with you here.
Yes.
Yeah. The probably, if I were to start with a skill, it revolves around the skill of being reflective. There's a saying, one of my favorite sayings when it comes to healthy relationship, it's by Josh McDowell. In order to find the right one, you have to be the right one. So we don't have a lot of skills around, I see people who don't have a lot of skills around reflection, self-reflection. When it comes to us as believers, that means basic skills. How do you have a quiet time? How do you spend time in God's presence, getting in God's Word, and praying through the Word of God and applying that? So any skill that involves our personal growth,
Sabbath, all that,
things like that. Then there's a whole cluster of skills around communication. You can't have a relationship without communication. What does that look like? One of the most important skills, and it's very much underrated, is the skill of listening. We think communication is about just talking and getting our point across, but it's about being able to listen in such a way where we understand another person from their point of view. We call that empathy. And empathy is very, very hard because we're naturally selfish and self-centered as human beings. So there are certain skills that will help us to learn how to be empathic listeners. And then we have communication skills when we're talking, for example, being assertive. Being assertive is when we respect ourselves enough to tell another person exactly and directly what we really think, what we really feel, what we really believe, what we really want in a way that's also respectful to what the other person wants, feels, believes, and wants. And those are skills, because without that, I mean, there was years I thought I was assertive and I found that I was aggressive. I was telling people exactly what I thought, and what I felt, what I believed, and what I wanted, but I did it in a way that was disrespectful to what they thought, felt, believed, and wanted. I didn't know it, you know. And there's people that are passive aggressive. They're indirect in their communication, or they're passive. They stuff it and they end up having gastrointestinal problems, cardiovascular problems, headaches, etc., because they're keeping stuff in. Those type of communication patterns are very destructive to relationships. So there's a lot of skill building just around listening and then being assertive in communication.
Could you say something about what passive aggressiveness look like with a couple, for example?
Yeah. Passive aggressiveness can drive a person crazy because you're not coming out and saying what you really feel or what you want, but you're sending a message that's pretty clear, and the person gets it. So it could be a situation where, let's say we're talking, and I don't want to tell you that I'm upset with what you're saying, and what I'll do, I'll just shut down on you. I'll give you the silent treatment.
Or what we call stonewalling.
Stonewall. That's my way of showing you how angry I am. I'm not going to let you in now. I want to put the wall up. So that could be very painful. Or I'm using sarcasm. So rather than telling you what I really think, I'm throwing a little humor in it and kind of stabbing you like that. And you go, whoa, that kind of hurt a little bit. What do you mean by that? What do you mean? I don't mean anything by that. Can't you take a joke? You know, like little sidebar, side out of the side of the mouth conversations, or I don't put my full effort. We see that a lot in therapy. We see people coming in, they're passive aggressive.
Withholding affection.
Withholding affection, using sex as a weapon, but also just when they come to therapy, they're not doing the work. They're half stepping. They don't want to put the work in. Matter of fact, they're so angry they already are out. I'm done. So I don't really do the work. I'll show up late. I leave early. You know, things like that can be passive aggressive expressions of anger. Just some examples.
Yeah. What do you notice as therapists? Some common relationship issues that you often are addressing with men, and then we'll also talk about women. But what are some common things that men are struggling with as a single person in a relationship, and even as a married man in a relationship?
Let you go for
One of the big things for men is pornography. Pornography is a major issue.
And do they see it as a issue, or has it become so normalized in our culture that you find you're telling them it's a problem?
Well, I think it's the latter. I think it's normalized, and even there are some women who give their men, I've seen that, free passes. You know, that's kind of what men do. Very interesting. I see two different kinds of women. I see women there are some women who actually experience that as an affair. So when a man is watching porn, to them it's like he's having an affair. And that's very painful for them, very similarly to if it was like a relationship. And then on the other hand, there are women who see it as he has a problem and he needs to get help. And in those cases, that they're very supportive. But I think as a whole, our culture, we've kind of made pornography okay for men, and it is devastating. It's devastating. Pornography is a billion-dollar industry.
Yes.
It is bigger than the NFL, and we know how much money in the NFL, and the NBA. And so that's a major problem. Yes. I could go on and on pornography. I would say another issue that a lot of times I have to help men with is difficulty, what I might call emotional illiteracy and emotional constipation. That men struggle with being able to communicate what they're feeling, and being able to express that to their wives, and they often can be aggressive. So a lot of times having to teach men how to talk to women. And so going back to some of the ways that we've been taught, and how some of the very subtle ways that we treat our women, I think feeds into that. How men talk to their women and not understand, okay, that's disrespectful. And that back to what I was saying earlier, I teach this a lot. You cannot not call your wife. You cannot not communicate with her and let her know what you're doing, or you're going to be late or whatever. And I think that feeds into some of the ways that in our culture we disrespect women. I think there are marriages where men, they love their wives, but they are disrespectful.
Yeah, and we were just saying that part of that is related to the objectification of women.
Right.
Because it is really difficult for a man to watch porn, go to strip clubs, look at Instagram as kind of a diet of women who are not dressed, and then have a high regard for women.
That's not gonna happen.
And then women also are feeling off compared to,
Absolutely.
like the woman is always then compared to the fantasy.
Right.
The woman can never measure up sexually
Never.
if what you are dieting on is someone who is paid professionally for sensuality and sex. So, and I often see that low regard for women sometimes in men show up just in having to have a woman as a counselor. It's very therapeutic, because if I'm doing my job well, I'm able to help them see, you just don't have a problem with your wife. You have a problem with women. Where does that come from? Sometimes it's their mother, but then it's also this culture encouraging men to sow to their flesh.
That's correct. Let me just to piggyback on the pornography, it's epidemic, and you're absolutely right. It's a $1 billion industry. As much as I love sports talk radio, and you know we listen to sports talk radio, look at how they advertise gentlemen's clubs. They've normalized that, and so we have young men, our boys will listen to that, and that's normal behavior. That's like, oh, that's sanctioned behavior, gentlemen's club. And so that's just an example of how it's been accepted and how desensitized we are. And it's creating a whole lot of devastation and havoc.
Thanks for watching this episode of Face to Face with Dr. Sarita Lyons. Join me next week for part 2 of my conversation with my friends and colleagues, Mr. Vincent Calloway and Dr. Randolph Walters.